quest. We're gonna ramble on about movies and books and television and film festivals and directors and all this other stuff that I really know nothing about because they made this really long list of things that they want to talk about and I can't even read through all of them, but it's gonna be great. Okay, start the show.
Hello and welcome to the Weekly Planet, your weekly dose of all things movies, TV, books, and anything else we feel like talking about. My name is Scott Daly, editor-in-chief of DailyPlanetFilms.com, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host and co-editor, Matt Freeman. Matt, how's it going?
It's going pretty well, Scott. I'm excited to talk about our topic today. We're going to talk about Fight Club.
So we will be breaking the first two rules of Fight Club by talking about it.
We will. I think they're going to come for our balls, but hopefully we'll be able to finish our podcast first.
Well, that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
To talk about Fight Club, we are joined by a very special guest today, your younger brother, Daniel Freeman. Daniel, welcome.
Hello.
How's it going today, sir?
It's going pretty good. I'm glad to be on the podcast to talk about one of my favorite movies.
Oh, so it is one of your favorite movies. See, the reason why we're talking about Fight Club is we decided we were going to do sort of a series, perhaps, on our favorite movies, and we just sort of rattled off our favorite movies, and I wanted to talk about Fight Club specifically because it used to be probably my number one favorite movie, but over time, it's just been replaced by other things, and I just wanted to discuss it and see if I still had that level of affection for it.
Yeah, it's certainly been a long time since I've seen it, but the way I remember it, it is definitely one of my favorite movies.
Okay, well, we'll get into Fight Club in a little bit. First, why don't we go around this table and talk about what we've seen recently. Well, Daniel, why don't you go first? What have you seen or read or
Sure.
or whatever?
So I will bounce that back and say I've seen two things recently, and I'll ask which one you'd rather me talk about. So I saw Sicario yesterday, or 2 days ago, which is this new kind of drug-running drama that came out. And I've also been watching the 8th season of Doctor Who. And I feel like I have interesting things to say about both of them, but which one sounds more interesting?
I saw Sicario recently, and I loved that movie, so you should talk about that one.
All right. So I really liked Sicario. It reminded me of a lot of different movies, and it's sort of interesting for how it could have been a really terrible movie actually, but they didn't make any of the obvious mistakes that they could have made, and that's hard to describe without really spoiling the entire movie.
Well, I have no idea what this movie is at all. So.
Right. Okay. That helps. So it's about so Emily Blunt is an FBI agent, and she's working in some trying to bust drug dealers teams in Arizona and in Texas, and she's approached by this intergovernmental task force that's decided they're going to step up their game and try and really hit the drug lords hard in some way that's better than just kind of the stalemate that the drug war has been in for the past 20 years. So the bad way you do this movie is you kind of have a Rambo strong female protagonist character that goes in and kills all the drug lords and saves all the hostages and whatnot. But I feel like Sicario does this. It doesn't do that at all. I'll say firstly. In fact, most of the movie is really kind of about how it's sort of about making Emily Blunt's character kind of continuously make sacrifices and kind of destroy any hope she had of ever making any effort or any meaningful change in this conflict. I don't know. Do you agree with that assessment, Scott?
Yeah, I do. I think her character is. I mean, she's still kind of a badass character, but not in the typical
right.
police FBI badass character way. She's kind of, I mean, she has very little control of what's going on around her, and she goes with it, but she's kind of just in a constant state of over her head the entire time.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's sort of refreshing because kind of like I was saying, there's a good way of doing this and a bad way of doing this, and it really just feels like it feels like it was done correctly.
So it seems like they did strong female protagonists without sort of going the obvious way of just making her completely perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's really, they managed to like make it so that she doesn't really have control of the situation in a way that isn't actually like patronizing. Like, if that makes any sense. There's like, it's not like it's because she's a woman and that's why she keeps failing repeatedly throughout the whole movie. It's like there was never any chance of this ever happening in the way that she expected it to, or really anyone would have expected it to. And it's just
Is it like Alien, where the movie protagonist could be replaced by a man and the plot would be the same?
More or less.
For the most, there's a couple scenes that it wouldn't work, but for the most part, yeah.
Yeah, for the most part, for the central themes.
The craziest thing about this movie to me is I think how poorly they're marketing it. Like, it's a wide release movie. It's in basically every single movie theater, and most people have never even heard of what it is. Like, I don't. That's inexcusable to me. This is a movie that could do really well, but they're not spending any money on marketing, from what I can see.
I think the problem is that it's really hard. So it's easy to market this movie as something that it's not. And by the way, some people reacted to it.
That hasn't stopped them.
Right. Yeah. Like, and like even the way some people reacted to some scenes in the theater, it's like, actually this movie is slightly more subtle than it makes out to be. And it kind of requires, I don't know, critical thought, I guess, to realize the sorts of points they're trying to make.
Right. Yeah. It's not a turn off your brain movie. I would argue that very few movies are that, but
right.
But they could easily market it as one. I mean, they do that with other movies all the time.
Well, yeah. It reminds me of No Country for Old Men, honestly, in terms of like tone and content. In fact, I thought the Benicio del Toro's character was actually played by Javier Bardem before I even saw this movie, but he's not, even though he's very similar.
Yeah, it's really good. It's the great performances by Emily Blunt and Benicio.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely see that in 18 months when it comes out on Netflix.
That's become the standard line.
Yeah, right. Never gonna get old.
Maybe sooner.
All right. So, Scott, what did you see recently, other than, perhaps one of the 47 movies you saw in 4 days?
I saw 18 movies over 4 days. Like I mentioned on last week's podcast, I was at Fantastic Fest, and I got horribly sick there, which I'm sure you've noticed by the nasally nature of my voice. I'm still recovering from my sickness, but I saw, 18 movies, and then went and saw The Martian on Friday because I didn't get enough. But they wanted money that time. I tried to give them my Fest badge, and they said no. I had to pay them money. It was weird.
They don't get it.
But the movie that I wanted to briefly just, one, brag about that I've gotten to see, and two, talk about is a movie called Green Room. This is a movie that just got a release date today, but it's not going to be till April 1st of next year. So I'm going to talk about this movie today, and no one's going to get to see it for 5 months. But it's this really good, I don't know, have you guys ever seen a movie called Blue Ruin?
No. But I read about it.
Because nobody saw that movie, but it was really good. So this is by the same director of Blue Ruin. Basically, it's about this punk rock band that is touring around the country, gets a gig at like a white supremacist bar. While in the green room, they witness some act of violence that they shouldn't have, and they end up trapped inside the green room, basically under siege by the neo-Nazi skinheads outside the door trying to get in and kill them, led by Patrick Stewart as the main bad guy.
He's a bad guy.
He did a really good job, but it's a very he doesn't go over the top with it. It's a very muted performance. It's perfect. The movie it's amazing. It's incredibly violent, really tense throughout the whole thing.
I'm having trouble imagining Patrick Stewart as a bad guy, to be honest.
He was a bad guy in Conspiracy Theory, starring Mel Gibson.
Wow. That's
Oh.
probably the first and last time we're going to mention conspiracy theory on this podcast.
I don't even remember him being in that movie.
He got his nose bitten off by Mel Gibson.
I mean, I remember all these things happening, but if you had asked me beforehand, I would not have been able to say that. So that's my favorite movie, The Festival. I saw a bunch of other good ones. I can rattle off some. There's a movie called Bone Tomahawk coming out, I think, in 2 weeks that I saw. It's a Kurt Russell Western / horror movie that's incredible. Comes out, I think 2 weeks from now. Everyone needs to go see that. It's vintage Kurt Russell Western, but also at the end of the movie it switches to this kind of survival horror thing that you wouldn't think works, but it just works really well. Also ridiculously violent. I think that's like the theme of Fantastic Fest, that these movies have to be incredibly violent, but in a good way, always in a good way.
Well, I would pay to see Kurt Russell like stare at a wall for an hour and a half. So
he's great. He's great. I wish he was supposed to be there at the festival, but he got injured apparently and had to back out last minute.
Which has to be a lie because Kurt Russell can't be injured.
Yeah, no one asked. The rest of the cast was there. This has Matthew Fox in it, the guy from Lost, and now I'm blanking on the other two characters' names. But they were all there for a Q&A after the movie, and no one asked him what happened to Kurt. I guess that's kind of not a cool question to ask, but
yeah, right.
But it's a first-time director that did this thing, and he directs it with such confidence, considering it's his first director job. Like, I couldn't believe it. He's directing 4 pretty big, well-known stars, and like it's a confident movie and knows exactly what it wants to be. It's paced really well. It's great. It's great, and
cool.
And Fantastic Fest is awesome, and everyone should go next year. And you can say hi to me because I'll be there.
Yeah, well, I'd love to.
I'll certainly try.
So I'll talk about what I saw recently. Tangled. Just kidding. I've been watching this documentary. That's not the right word. It's like a PBS thing. It's called How We Got Here. It's like a series, and it's kind of like how it's made, except it's about like how various technologies developed over the last like couple hundred years, mostly, to kind of get to the point they're at now. So like there'll be an episode about like cold, and it like first they talk about how like there was just no way to be cool in like the South, for example, for forever, until somebody figured out how to ship ice and then like keep the ice cold for months and all these, and it's like amazing that they could do that. And then they gradually figured out artificial refrigeration, and just it's interesting because as like a consumer of science media like this, I sort of am not used to TV programs actually teaching me things. I'm just used to being like, yes, I already knew that. I learned that in engineering classes or whatever. But this program is just like chock full of stuff I didn't know. So I'm just like really enjoying actually learning something.
That sounds really cool. Is that Netflix, I'm guessing?
It is.
This is reminding me
your source for entertainment.
This is reminding me of one of my friend group's ongoing conversations, which is what we do in the event of a nuclear holocaust, and how do we like rebuild civilization if we don't know all of the science. So it makes me want to watch this so that I can continue learning all of the science.
Yeah, it's pretty cool because they'll highlight something like they were talking about how important vacuum tubes were, and I was like, yeah, whatever. Vacuum tubes are like part of computers, but it's like actually vacuum tubes have really broad applications for all electronics before they ever figured out that they could use them to make a digital computer, and I never knew that. So.
Huh.
Lots of cool stuff.
Awesome.
But that's nonfiction, so you can't dig into it too much. So let's move on to our main topic
Subtext
of breaking the first 2 rules, talking about Fight Club. So yes, this used to be one of my favorite movies, and me and Scott both watched it again in the last week or so as part of our homework for this podcast.
Oh no, I didn't do my homework.
Well, that's okay.
I did my homework very late. I literally finished the movie, and then Matt called me 20 seconds later.
Yeah.
So
Well, Daniel didn't know it was his homework. So. But it was, I wanted to watch it again because I hadn't watched it in a long time, and I wanted to see how it held up. So first I'll ask Scott, how did it hold up for you?
I really like this movie. I mean, it's David Fincher. He's one of the masters of filmmaking, and he always does a really good job at setting a mood and keeping it throughout the film. The thing that surprised me is, honestly, when you said that you wanted to do this movie, I figured this was going to be a fight between you and I, because I didn't remember really liking Fight Club. And it turns out that I like the movie a lot. I didn't like the cultural stance on Fight Club that exists or existed. It might have died off a little bit. Watching this as a 30-year-old man, I took it at a much different level than I think I took it the first time that I saw it, and I think that the majority of people took it the first time they saw it, and I think we'll get into that a little bit later on in the podcast, but it's a good movie. It's solid. I thought that it's like almost 2.5 hours long. It might be a little bit too long. I don't know if any of y'all felt that, but it's a really good film.
Okay, yeah, I want to respond to those points, but first, I just wanted to get Daniel's kind of first take on things. How does Fight Club rank for you? Would you say it's one of your favorite movies, or is it just kind of a pretty good movie? Or
Yeah, so I don't think I ever really had a chance with Fight Club because, so when it was like 1999 when it came out, and all these like really super cool high school people that I looked up to, like including my brother, saw this movie and thought it was really awesome. So I, of course, immediately thought it was really awesome. And I thought it was really awesome probably until I was capable of actually critically evaluating movies myself. And then I continued thinking it was really awesome. So it's actually pretty hard for me to objectively evaluate like whether or not Fight Club is an awesome movie or if it's just like something that I have to think is awesome because of my upbringing. Yeah. But that said, I think Fight Club is a really fantastic movie. And I do agree with Scott's kind of wariness about calling this a really great movie, considering how it is sometimes used as a piece of counterculture, which I could also talk about at length.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think I don't. It feels like misinterpreted is a strong word, but I think it's one that I think I can use here. So I think a lot of people misinterpret the meaning of this film.
Right. So I was thinking about this earlier today, and my elevator pitch summary of this sort of idea is that it's a movie about like a midlife crisis of a 30-year-old guy that a bunch of 18 to 25-year-olds latched onto as like the anthem of their generation.
Yeah.
So it's not really for them, but they seem to have interpreted it as for them.
Yeah, and some of this I honestly so I'm going to be critical because the only way that I can express loving something is to criticize it. I think a lot of this is David Fincher's fault because of how he glamorizes Tyler Durden. I'm going to refer to Brad Pitt's character as Tyler Durden and Ed Norton's character as the narrator because that's how they do it in discussing these movies. He glamorizes Tyler Durden like he just constantly. There's no point when you're actually successfully like brought down to earth. And he sort of tries to do it in the scenes like toward the end where the narrator is running around in his underpants waving a gun around, and it's like he's obviously like a pathetic. He's supposed to be a figure of like pity because he's like lost his mind and his world is upside down and he's lost everything and he's running around in his underpants. But you just see him as comedic, and you still see Tyler Durden as awesome.
Right.
And
actually
he's supposed to be the main character, you know.
I wrote that in my notes this time on my phone notes as I was watching the film that I've never noticed before. I agree. The Ed Norton, the narrator character, once he's realized that Tyler Durden is him, like shifts to become a completely new character. And I think Fincher's doing it on purpose to try to elicit that sympathy. But you're right, it just comes off. It's too over the top, and it comes off as more comedic than pathetic, and it backfires.
Yeah.
I think it's there. I think there's still an undertone of every, like, at some point halfway through the movie, I started realizing that what Fincher's trying to say is he's making fun of these people that think this way. That, like, I think the scene where they're standing on the bus looking at the Calvin Klein model, saying, "Is that what a man looks like?" And then the very next scene is Brad Pitt with his shirt off fighting, and he looks basically identical. Like he has the same he has the same build. Like so like it seems like almost to be making fun of the way these people would think and how they feel like they're transcending a consumerist culture, but they're really not.
I think another example of that. I am being pretty hard on it here, but like, you know, the space monkeys are all supposed to be, again, like really pitiful, just completely outcast, like beta males, for lack of a better word. Like you're never supposed to think that they're cool. The whole point of them is that they're looking for something to latch onto because they're so, like, their lives are meaningless. But like at the end, or really several times throughout the movie, they're portrayed as being like cool and like badasses, and like they got the shaved head and they got the, you know, it's like, no, you're supposed to make them seem like creepy and crazy and repellent. Definitely that's how it is in the book. Like in the book, the space monkeys are terrifying because he's like called up this like force of complete like anarchy and nihilism, and he can't control it now, and like that's intrinsically terrifying. And the book is a lot darker actually in ways sort of in line with that. And in the movie, the space monkeys are just sort of like, yeah, these are my awesome bros and we're gonna hang out.
So I guess that's something I want to get into at some point. You're the only one of the three of us that have read the book, and I know there's a lot of differences specifically in the ending that were made. I think we can get into that in a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to insult this movie. Fincher, like, he's really good at what he does, but maybe it was just so subtextual that people didn't pick up on it. Like, I mean, to contrast, like, The Wolf of Wall Street is a movie that was glamorizing the lifestyle of those Wall Street executives, but at the same time, to me, it was very clear that it was making fun of them the entire run of the movie. But there were still people that didn't see that interpretation. So that, to me, was way more textual than it was subtextual. Mm-hmm. And this movie, it's very much it's definitely doing the same type of thing, but it's very subtextual, and I think that was missed a lot. And that's what drives me crazy about this movie and made me think I didn't like it. It's not that I don't like the movie, it's that I don't like people.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, I'm probably one of the people that you didn't like, because like I remember in like freshman year of college, I read this. This is a good story, trust me. I read this thing online that was like, don't watch Fight Club every day for a week because it'll really mess you up. And I took this as a challenge. So I watched Fight Club. I didn't just watch the movie over and over. I watched like the director's cut one night and then like the actor's commentary one night. But I ended up basically watching the movie every day for a week. And it pretty much did exactly what this internet person said it would. It basically gave me like the Edward Norton monologue in my brain, where like I'm walking around and like being totally nihilistic and criticizing everyone for being fake, like Holden Caulfield. Mm-hmm. And the thing that's ridiculous about that is like the movie is making fun of Edward Norton,
right?
Like I said, the movie is not saying. I think, you know, in the sense that you just said, subtextually, the movie is not saying like. The movie is not speaking with Ed Norton's voice. The movie is Ed Norton's character is the subject of the movie, and it's showing how he goes from being that way to actually finding some meaning by the end.
Right.
When he like decides that he's gonna, you know, try to protect Marla and try to undo everything Tyler's doing and try to undo the destruction of the financial world.
Yeah, I think if if there's any argument to be made, it's that David Fincher doesn't do a good enough job of convincing you that the financial world shouldn't be completely destroyed by the end of the movie, or at least the world depicted within the movie. Like you're basically it's really hard to interpret the scene where Ed Norton is talking about all of his IKEA furniture as anything other than like, yeah, materialism is kind of a bad thing. Like I sort of agree with this mindset, but then by the end of the movie, you're clearly like, okay, yeah, this has kind of gone a little bit too far. Buildings are being exploded,
right?
So there's not really a clear line.
Yeah, and I don't think the movie is ever saying that materialism is good, and I just think it's saying that this standpoint of I'm gonna move past it all and then therefore declare myself a better person because I've been the only person who was smart enough to realize materialism was bad, and therefore I'm better than everyone else around me, and I can start to control things and think that I can fix things to make it better. I think it's saying that's bad, and
yeah. I mean, it's interesting, because again, the first time I saw this, I was probably 19, and I was really into it in my early 20s. And the thing about that is, like, in that period of your life, you don't really have any like buy-in to society or civilization or whatever. Like, you're just this kid, you don't really have any stake, and so it's really appealing for somebody to say, like, look at all these phonies. By the time you're 30, you do have stake. I have a house and kids and everything, and it's like, yeah, that I intrinsically see the ridiculousness of like just wanting to burn it all down because nihilism. It's like, yeah, that's ridiculous. When you're a kid, it doesn't immediately seem ridiculous.
Especially as a college kid, when you go to college and you suddenly think you're brilliant and you don't care, like that all this materialism and commercialism, and you don't need that. Like, you're better than all of it. And I understand, to Daniel's earlier point, this resonated with people of that age, I think, for that precise reason, because they're too stupid and immature to realize that it's not glorifying that kind of thing at all. And
I'll go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'll also point out that The Matrix came out like 6 months after this, so it was sort of like you really stood no chance. You were basically with the counterculture if you saw this movie and
true.
Liked it.
The one thing I wanted to touch on that I noticed, especially this time watching it, was the movie, and this again goes to what I think Fincher's trying to do subtextually, is they talk over and over again about how you yourself are not significant. Each person, each member of Project Mayhem and the Space Monkeys isn't significant. No one person's better than another, but it's very clear that Tyler Durden is treated as like a king of the organization. Like, everyone does stuff for him. Like, they don't treat him as one of them. They treat him as better than them.
Yeah.
I don't know what else there is to say about that, but I just that was really the first time this time watching that became apparent to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like they're fake. They're fake nihilists. They're not even real nihilists.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dan.
And there's probably a way that could have been made more clear, like to show that whatever hierarchies and bureaucracies were torn down by the shift to this Fight Club system, they're still really there in the Fight Club system. They just care about different things.
Right. I mean, they still definitely had like a caste system of sort. I think they made it clear that there were a handful of members who were, I guess, some of the first ones, who were the ones that, in the end, they were the ones that were going to get to watch the explosion with Tyler, and like were the ones that were bossing around the other newer members. So yeah, I mean, it still was all there. It was just under the illusion of something else.
Yeah.
And I don't like when Tyler's whole speech, like, maybe it's just because I'm 30 now and old, but like, you are not your job. That whole speech, like, that just felt tired to me, and I was like, Jesus, okay, we get it.
Yeah.
Does it feel tired because you've seen this movie too many times, or?
I just think it's because I'm just like sick of nihilism. Like, I get it. Like, you might be right to a certain extent, but but calm down. I think that's
job actually.
I mean, I really think this response is because like our generation grew up with Fight Club as like our cultural touchstone. Like everyone that's 30 now was watching Fight Club when they were a teenager and is like, no, I'm not going to let my life become my job when I grow up. That would be stupid. And then you watch it again when you're 30 and it's like, oh yeah, this message again. God, I heard this already.
Yeah. Well, I honestly think if I had like just seen this movie for the first time today, I would still think it was a great movie because of it's just an awesome movie. Like the pacing and like the fact that it just like puts you in this psychotic dreamlike state that just engrosses you and sweeps you along for like the 2.5 hours or whatever it is, and you don't even like notice when totally implausible things happen because you've like totally bought into this sort of weird internal logic. But I still probably would have had the same response that I did this time of just being like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a childish message, or that's kind of a childish thing that Tyler Durden is saying, and it's obviously correct that the narrator has learned the correct lesson that he's going to reject Tyler Durden and shoot his face off.
Right, and I don't like. I'm insulting this movie a lot, but what I'm actually insulting is the improper reading of it. I think to me, Fincher wants us to think what I'm thinking, and I think by having Tyler Durden repeat those same lines over and over again, and I'm sick of it. You're right, because I've seen this movie a bunch of times and we grew up with it. But also, he says it so many times within just the context of the movie that you're just like, I was just sick of him as a character by the end of it. He just annoyed me, and I think that was intentional.
Yeah, that is interesting because I honestly thought Brad Pitt's character was awesome when I was a kid, and now
I totally did too.
But now I totally agree with you. I'm like, yeah, he's a punk. I'd want to punch him in the face. Like, he's just annoying.
Yeah. So I wanted to touch real quick on what we were talking about, just the dreamlike state the movie puts you in. Mm-hmm. Since this was the first time I really tried to watch it with like a seriously critical eye, I couldn't believe how much the Tyler Durden reveal was telegraphed throughout the entire movie. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous to the point where like I can't believe I didn't pick up on it the first time I saw it. Like I watched The Sixth Sense recently, and that telegraphs the big reveal in that too, but it's in a kind of way that if you would only recognize it if you were looking for it. Mm-hmm. But like this, like some of it's so obvious, like with the literally spliced frames where Tyler appears a couple times before he actually meets Edward Norton's character. But then just like the how like words that are said, like it's ridiculously telegraphed, and I think it's a credit to the filmmaker that it puts you in that state where you don't even realize it. Like when he's sitting there explaining to the doctor what happened to him, and Tyler's sitting there and he's repeating what he says, and you don't like that doesn't strike you as weird at all. Like,
or there's lots of clues. Like when he's seeing the doctor for insomnia, and he's like, I doze off and I wake up in strange places.
Right.
There's another thing, just like one shot that I just like burst out laughing because I was like, I know that he's saying something with this, although I'm not sure what. It was the first time he hugs Bob and he's like crying on Bob. Bob and him are like on the right hand side of the frame, and the left hand side of the frame is just an American flag lit really ominously. and the shot just holds for like 30 seconds, and there's no like zoom in on him and Bob. It very intentionally holds him and Bob with the American flag on the other half of the screen, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, knowing Fincher, that was very deliberately framed. I can't think of what exactly that would mean either, but it definitely has a meaning.
Right. I'm sure you could write an essay on it, but I don't know what it was intended to mean exactly.
I mean, really, the whole movie is sort of shot with this like ethereal sense. Like I'm remembering the scene with the penguin. So like really, you're sort of trained not to think that it's weird that a spliced frame of Brad Pitt just kind of being there is weird at all. Like I don't ever remember thinking that was going to happen, like, at all. Like, it started, like, things just kept getting weirder as the movie kept going on, but I was never, like, I never thought it was telegraphed. I should probably watch this again.
Yeah, well, I think what it's doing is it's putting you in a state of mind where you don't just, like, get up and walk out of the theater when they do the reveal because it's so stupid. You've accepted that, like, this is a thing that can happen in this world because it's like reality is broken down so badly.
Yeah.
That it makes sense.
And then they smartly replay a lot of the scenes where the two of them were talking or fighting to show just Ed Norton by himself. Just for the people that they really cement it.
Yeah. I haven't read the book in, like, I don't know, probably 10 years actually, but I remember they definitely did that reveal differently in the book. It was not I mean they had to because they don't have the techniques of film. Right. And also, I guess I should just, maybe we can segue into the book just briefly, even though I'm the only one who read it and I don't remember
go for it.
I was I didn't really like the book, and I'm pretty sure the reason is just that, like, the movie has this, like, fun, quirky humor to it, and the book is like you take all of the dark, like the super dark humor, like the testicular cancer scenes where no one can really comfortably laugh at them, even though they're supposed to be funny, and you leave only those for the humor, and then you just make everything 10 times more, like, depressing. And so the story behind Fight Club is that Chuck Palahniuk kept being, like, rejected for things that he thought were really good, so he basically created, like, the most disturbing thing he possibly could and sent that in, and that was Fight Club. And they loved it, and they published it, and it's like, first of all, that's a really inspiring story because it makes you want to, like, take more risks. But it definitely shows because, like, it's such a weird, almost disjointed story that you can really believe that it was just a guy's effort to, like, disturb someone as much as he could. Yeah, definitely.
That's interesting. I always thought of it as just kind of like standard Chuck Palahniuk having a awful trying to make the grossest possible thing as just kind of what he does.
Well, I think that's exactly what happened. Is that was his first big success, and then that sort of became his hallmark of, like, oh, this is what people want. Because now it doesn't.
Yeah, I guess you don't get to choose which ones make all the money.
Yeah.
So the one more thing I wanted to talk about, and maybe I want to talk about the ending. Okay. And so my first thing about the ending is I didn't think it made sense. And in context, like, so it didn't seem to me that, and maybe this was again what Fincher was trying to do with it. It didn't make sense in context of what Project Mayhem was trying to accomplish, like, from a destroying commercialism. Like, getting rid of people's debts is not the same thing as freeing people from commercialism. You know, like, you're not making people not want to spend all their money on stuff by erasing their debt or anything. So it just didn't register to me at all. Like, it didn't make sense. And am I the only one that?
You're not the only one. I mean, my interpretation of this, and again, this is, like, to some degree, you're sort of apologizing for the movie because I don't think this was communicated very well. But, like, Tyler Durden is, like, the manifestation of all of the narrator's childishness, in a sense. So his plans are going to be simplistic and childish and childlike, and they're, like, and kind of like how my daughter will say, like, what do you mean we don't have enough money for that? Let's just go to the bank. Let's just drive through Wells Fargo. Because that's where money comes from. Like, that's probably the level of, like, sophistication at which Tyler Durden is actually operating. I mean, there's even the scene where, or the voiceover where the narrator's saying, like, what was Tyler's plan, for what purpose, for what greater good? Well, in Tyler we trusted, and it's like the point being, like, no, he doesn't have a plan. He he is a schizophrenic hallucination.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, and that I guess that goes into your point. Money comes from the bank. I mean, blowing up these credit card company buildings is not going to erase debt. That's not how things actually work in the real world. And I think that, and maybe, I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe that was very deliberate and intentional. And this is just me as an older, wiser person picking up on it on the first time. So how does this ending, and if you don't remember, sorry for putting the spotlight on you, how does it differ from the book? Because I remember reading that it was very different from how the book ended. But
well, the book, he's going to blow up a building. I think it may have been a credit card building. I don't remember. And he's going to blow it up, and it's going to fall onto a museum. I think it was a natural history museum, or it may have just been a historical museum. And the metaphor, the book explicitly states that Tyler's like metaphor is that he's going to restart history by destroying this museum. And this is already more obviously crazy, because it's like you're not going to do anything by destroying a museum. You're just going to destroy a bunch of stuff. But I can see how a delusional person would think that destroying a museum was going to, reset history.
Yeah.
And then Marla and a bunch of other characters like come up on the roof and stop him before he can blow it up. Actually, I think he tries to blow it up, and then his like primer fails, which was like foreshadowed earlier in the book that he can't mix up primer properly or something. And then, but he shoots himself in the face. So the other creepy thing about the book is that like due to Fight Club, like he has a horrible slash down half of his face. He gets way more beat up looking in the book than he gets in the movie. And then when he shoots himself in the face at the end, he blows out the other cheek, so he has a Glasgow smile like the Joker, where his cheeks are split open. And then he is put in an institution, and the movie is just like he's in the institution, and the institution workers are like, "Would you like some more food, sir?"
Oh, jeez.
And like at this point he knows he's crazy, but like the world is crazy too, and that's why it's disturbing.
Wow.
So that's the book.
So knowing that, I feel that David Fincher did a pretty good job trying to salvage like some sort of message out of the movie.
I agree.
Like that's like a the end no moral sort of ending of a book.
Yeah. I mean it's way more obviously just being like, here, feel bad.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Holy crap! Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably well written. I'm not gonna say the book's awful, but that's depressing.
Yeah, I mean, you can even believe at the end of the movie that he might go to an institution, but they don't show it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it leaves you with some semblance of hope for the main character.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll admit to also being confused by the end of the movie, because it kept coming to me today that this movie is basically lost in translation, except Bill Murray's character is Brad Pitt's character. And the more I thought about it, the more I liked this analogy.
Wait, you're going to need to explain that one in great detail.
Well, I mean, most of the comedy factor here just comes from replacing every single one of Tyler Durden's scenes with Bill Murray. And really, the movie changes, but it's like mostly the same movie, I guess. And I feel like you could graft the ending of Lost in Translation onto the ending of Fight Club, and you get a more complete message, because there's not really like, the world is exploding, and like you're saying, you're not really going to end the world by blowing up some bank buildings. So like what are we supposed to take out of, like, what is the central message of the film of Fight Club? Because I really want it to be the central message of the film Lost in Translation, and I feel like it almost is, but it doesn't quite get you there.
Well, is your point that it's about connection ultimately?
It's about yes, that's sort of right, because for most of the movie, it's kind of a rejection of society and material objects and people, and it's sort of replaced by this kind of vacuous club where everyone is a different sort of automata than they are in regular society. They're just servicing this destruction of everything. And by the end, you're convinced that Edward Norton has made he's made some sort of breakthrough. I mean, I I think he's a better person overall at the end of Fight Club than he was at the beginning, but it's still sort of muddy. Like, where does he go from here?
Yeah.
What was the actual conclusion reached by Edward Norton?
I don't know. I think it has something to do with like admitting that he cares about Marla or that he cares about some other person.
Yeah, and that's something we haven't really talked about Marla.
Yeah.
Like at all, and she's a pretty big deal. I mean, his beginning narration blames her for almost everything, for the whole start of this, even though that's not really true. But
well, yeah, I mean, the joke is that she's just a reflection of him, and that's her only crime.
Right. So, I mean, so maybe him admitting that he likes her at the end is therefore him accepting himself.
Yeah, but that's just like the lamest possible ending for Fight Club.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, again, they're grafting like a happy moral onto a book that was just supposed to be utterly grinding and nihilistic. So
yeah.
So I don't know. I think at the end of the book, Marla and these people come and save him. So it's actually quite backwards. It's Marla. She's like, I don't remember exactly what happens, but it's basically like she comes and like sort of selflessly offers like connection to, offers a metaphorical hand to him, and he decides that there are other people who care about him, and there are things to care about.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that it works better or worse necessarily than the movie. I think both of them.
It gives Norton agency if he's the one that comes to the realization by himself.
That's true.
Wouldn't it just be so much better if the final scene was like the buildings collapsing in the background and like Bill Murray whispering something into Ed Norton's ear, and then just like both of them laughing a little bit, and then like walking away, and then like that's the end. Like,
yes,
so much better.
Yes, it would actually, because then we could be debating about what he said to her instead of debating about the meaning of whatever.
So one of the other things, and I don't know if y'all know, this movie is very metatextual too. Like, I never noticed before. Did you catch Matt, this time around, at the beginning, he says, I don't know what to say. And at the ending, he says, I still don't know what to say.
Yeah.
And he says, flashback
I've watched
joke.
this movie so many times. Yes, I did catch that.
I never caught that before.
And then Brad Pitt says, flashback humor.
Yeah, yeah. Like, and I think that maybe that goes into our whole, it establishes the craziness, so we just accept the Tyler Durden reveal, like you said. We just accept all these crazy things that are happening around us because, I mean, not only does it do that, there are the frame splices. There's parts where it literally like moves the frame around to look like a film strip when Tyler Durden's talking. So like it's very outside of just the normal world of the film. It's willing to break that wall.
I mean, just the scenes where Ed Norton is literally talking to the camera while Tyler Durden does things in the restaurant is way unusual for a normal movie.
Right.
Yeah. I guess there was one last thing on my list of things to talk about, which sort of goes back to what we talked about already, though. But it was just like this. It was this article that our favorite reviewer, film Crit Hulk, wrote about David Fincher and how he just sort of uses the same tone for everything. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to sort of bring that up and see if that was a valid criticism, and two, whether that applied here. Scott, do you remember what I'm talking about?
Vaguely. I haven't read that article in a long time, but I do remember it.
I like the main example he uses is just like there are things in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo where he just films them with the same like cold detachment that he films everything, and there are things that are supposed to disturb and repel you. And when you're watching the movie, you're just like singularly caught by the fact that you're feeling the wrong things because of how they've been framed, in context of the film. Mm-hmm. And I think that sort of applies here because, ultimately what we were talking about earlier was like the tone not matching up with what's supposed to be getting communicated. So I don't know what else I can add about that. Daniel, do you feel like David Fincher sort of is monotonous in his tone and lacks finesse?
So he also did The Social Network, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know if it's like lacking in tone. I think he does he gets that tone very well, or rather, he's very good at getting one particular tone, and he seems to know this, so he just shoots everything this way, and it works sometimes, and other times he suffers for it because maybe you need to get something other than like detachment and ennui.
Yeah.
But like, I think it works pretty well for Fight Club for the most part, just because that is like a central theme of the movie. But I do agree that it sort of washes over whatever you were supposed to get out of the ending of the movie.
Yeah, and ironically, I just watched Gone Girl again not long ago, and that was him, right? I'm not going crazy. That was a Fincher movie.
Yeah, that's him. Yeah.
Okay, good, because the tone of that movie is identical to the tone of this movie, and I think I agree with Daniel that it works here, just because detachment is kind of one of the themes of the film, or at least on a straight text level. So I think it does work here, but I think that is true that he shoots everything in one particular tone, which is detached and uncaring, and that does hurt him in some of his other films.
So I just read that he did The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and now I understand why I don't like that movie.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, because it's trying to tell this happy story of life in a completely detached tone.
The same tone as Alien 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
All right. Well, I'm out of ideas. That's I love this movie. It's probably still one of my favorite movies. It's interesting because my relationship with it has changed over time, maybe more than my relationship with any movie, actually, because I almost see a completely different moral now. Daniel, any final thoughts?
The only final thing I even thought about was how this movie could not have been made after 9/11 for like so many different reasons. And it's sort of interesting. It has like an interesting place in history where you have this like kind of detached movie about terrorists, essentially, that is a cultural touchstone, and then like 9/11 happens, and then there's not really this sort of thing after that for quite a while. So it's
Yeah, that's really true.
It's an interesting cultural fixture.
I was honestly surprised. I hadn't remembered when the film came out, and I was surprised when I saw 99, because when I think of the film, it feels to me like a post 9/11 everything is meaningless and we're all screwed type of movie. So I was surprised that it took place before 9/11. But yeah, I think you're right. There's no way they would have made this in the aftermath of that event.
Mm-hmm. Scott, any closing remarks?
So I liked this movie a lot. I enjoyed watching it. I did think it was a little long. When I checked 2 hours, 20 minutes, it's a little long for me. But it's really good. And like you, Matt, I appreciate it on a level different than what I expected to. I think if you come out of this movie and want to start your own fight club, you're doing it wrong and should be ashamed of yourself. Even though there were a ton of people that did that when they finished watching this movie. But I think that's the immaturity of the audience, and not necessarily the fault of the director. I think the subtext is there. You just have to be mature enough to recognize it, which I'm happy to say that I now am.
Yeah, I'm glad we're all extremely mature and humble, and we can admit that.
Well, I'm on the tail end of 18 to 25, so I'm definitely not mature yet.
Okay. Well,
but you guys are super mature. You're totes mature.
All right. Well, I guess that's all we had. We're coming up on an hour, so we did pretty good on time. this time around. Matt, where can people find you?
You can look for me on Twitter at MORIDINAMAEL, and I'll write that down at the bottom.
And do you have anything coming up for us later this week that we should look out for?
I think I have an article on Whiplash in the pipes.
Yep.
Which I really loved.
I need to see that still.
Oh, God, it was awesome.
It was really awesome. And Matt's article is really good. Spoilers for those people that haven't read it yet. Daniel, how about you? Where can people find you? Can people find you?
I think I have a... Oh, yeah, I have a Twitter.
Okay, but if you don't use it, then they can't really find you there.
That's true. Oh, right. I'm a blog editor. I have a blog.
Yes.
I'm the blog editor of the Berkeley Science Review, so you can probably find me there. I will. I mean, if you just Google Berkeley Science Review, you'll probably find.
We'll put the address in the show notes, so they'll be able to get there for you.
That sounds good.
And you can find me on Twitter at Scott Daly, Daly 85, or Daly Planet Films, also on Twitter. That's kind of our site Twitter. This week I will be dropping a review of The Martian. And then, Matt, I know you need to see it. We want to get a podcast together because we read this book and talked about it a lot, and I think we're going to want to get together and talk about the film. So we will definitely have a podcast. I thought about talking about it a little bit on here at the beginning, but I want to save all that discussion for once you've seen it.
Okay. All right.
But I think that's all we have.
Thanks for joining us, Daniel.
Look out
I look forward to the future.
just in general, just the vague.
I'm excited what tomorrow will bring me.
All right. One more thing to look out for before we go. Our Daly Planet book club is starting up. By the time this is released, we will have our schedule for the first book, Wool, out there. So if you want to read along and participate in that, I'll include a link to our intro post and our schedule post for the first book. But be looking out for that. Daly Planet Book Club. It's going to be fun. All right. Well, that's all for us. Thank you, guys, and we'll see you next week.